Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 6, Episode 8, The Mom and Pop Store. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing very, very well. I'm doing okay. I'm a little overwhelmed this week. I'm not going to lie. I've got a few things in the hopper, as they say. Who says that? I don't know. People say it. And so TBH, I'm not really going to banter too much. I know a lot of you are really disappointed. You love my pointless banter, but we're just going to get right into the episode. So the synopsis for the Mom and Pop Store is as follows. Kramer insists that Jerry give his shoes to a small, struggling shoe repair shop. But when it goes out of business and the shoes are sold off, Jerry is stuck in cowboy boots. Elaine helps Mr. Pitt win a place holding the Woody Woodpecker balloon during the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. George buys a convertible after being told it once belonged to Jon Voight. Jerry crashes his dentist's parade party to get his tooth repaired. This episode was written by Tom Gamble and Max Pross. All right, so we start out in the car dealership lot. George is getting a new car. He made up his mind. He wants a Volvo. The sales guy suggests a LeBaron convertible. NI, George says, not interested. I have to admit, I use NI quite a bit in my own life. Well, the guy says, it has more miles on it, but it used to belong to Jon Voight. Well, of course, this intrigues George. All right, next we are at Jerry's apartment. Jerry's on the phone. He's on the phone with Tim Whatley. It turns out he was giving him Elaine's address, and he says, yeah, you're invited to his Thanksgiving Eve party. He has the apartment that overlooks where they inflate all of the balloons for the parade, which I just myself like to call Inflation Station. Elaine is so excited. She's dancing. She's always had a crush on Tim Whatley. Why can't he ask me out? Pushes Jerry when she says that. Jerry says, oh, you don't want to date a dentist. He'll always be criticizing your brushing technique. Away from the gums, away. George enters, jingling his keys. Hey, they're so excited. New car. Jerry asks, so you got the Volvo? No, I decided to go with the 89 LeBaron. A LeBaron? Jerry's confused by the choice. George is like, well, it was previously owned by Jon Voight. Jon Voight, the actor? That's right. So that's why you bought the car? No. I think yes. Well, so what, George says. Elaine points out how in Jon Voight's movies, he's never in cars. Doesn't even make sense that he'd have a car. Kramer enters, concerned about the shoe place in the neighborhood. They need business, Jerry, or they'll get shut down for one of those gourmet coffee or cookie stores. Elaine likes coffee. George likes cookies. Kramer calls them a bunch of yuppies, and it's their attitude that's driving these mom and pop stores out of business and destroying the fabric of the neighborhood. George brings up a really good point. What's so special about a mom and pop store? I tell you, if my mom and pop ran a store, I wouldn't shop there. This is one of my favorite lines of all time in the series. I mean, it is so funny, especially because we know we've witnessed Frank and Estelle Costanza's way of operating. And so it's just perfect. I love the delivery. I love the line. It's just such a fun moment. Well, Kramer disagrees, Bogombo. They've been in the neighborhood for 48 years. Well, Jerry tells him, look, you can take my sneakers for some detailing. My take on this scene, this is a fun scene for Elaine. I love the physicality she gets to show with her excitement about Tim inviting her to his party. We get a get out shove, except it's done on the he of why can't he ask me out? It's so unnecessary, but it's just so fun. Jerry's point about not wanting to date a dentist because of the constant scrutiny about brushing and the technique, that sort of got me thinking. I think it would be kind of stressful. I think he brings up a good point to date, sort of anyone in a very specific specialty job, whatever, like a dentist with brushing or oral hygiene, I guess. A dermatologist would be so strict about sunscreen, and look, these are all good things to keep you healthy. But I'm just saying, I don't know if I'd be able to relax. I grew up with a mother who was a hairstylist. Now, that wasn't very stressful, but she was definitely strict about, how much I washed my hair, what styles of hair I should have, what products I used. She was, big believer in salon grade shampoo, conditioners. She would always talk about the drugstore brands are not good. Anyway, she did prevent me from doing the awful curled bangs that was so popular in the 80s. I mean, all my friends were doing it. I wanted to do it, but she was like, no, it's going to look terrible. So she definitely helped me prevent some hair regret in my life. That doesn't mean I loved all my hairdos. I mean, I did get perms. I did get perms in the 80s. I did try the Rachel do. I think I've talked about that on this podcast. Which I instantly regretted. But my hairstylist mother warned me, like, hey, this is a lot of work, okay? The Rachel do is not an easy style to have. And yeah, I had to learn the hard way. I made a big mistake. I think one of the most stressful partners to have maybe like a professional chef. Like on the one hand, I love to be pampered with someone cooking for me, really good foods. But I also love like cheap ass fast food. So I feel like I'd have to sneak around and have like Taco Bell behind my chef husband or boyfriend's back, kind of out of sight. I'd be very nervous about that. All right, back to the scene. I have to say, I'm not a fan of what Elaine has to say about Jon Voight. Look at his movies. There's no car. It's like, what? The writing there is just really, really weak. And it's just reaching. It felt like filler dialogue here. I mean, okay, so what does Jon Voight's movie roles have to do with him owning a car in real life? It just makes no sense. And it just rubs me the wrong way. All right, next we are at the mom and pop shoe repair store. Kramer is giving Jerry's sneakers to the mom and pop. They're so thankful for the business. So many sneakers. Kramer's like, yes, he has a Peter Pan complex. Pop says, oh, they'll be ready a week from Thursday. Uh-oh, Kramer starts to get a nosebleed. Well, Mom helps him lie back and, get a tissue. Then he sees all the wires sticking out from the ceiling, and he tells Mom and Pop, they better get that checked out. This place could blow any second. Pop points out to Mom, I don't think we've ever called an electrician in 48 years. The actress who plays Mom is Elsa Raven. What a great name. Elsa Raven. Such an actress name. I know her best as the Save the Clock Tower lady from Back to the Future. She's also appeared in the Amityville Horror, Titanic, Days of Our Lives. There isn't much to this mom role, but I like the couple Mom and Pop together. I think they're like the perfect, visual couple of a mom and pop store, and it's a solid performance by Elsa. She doesn't get much, but she does good with it. All right, next we are at Mr. Pitt's office. Some big band music is playing, and Elaine is at her desk. She's dancing around, kind of doing a little chair dance while taking the salt off of pretzel rods. Mr. Pitt enters and asks if she's done with the salt removal. No, I'm still working on it. He annoyingly asks what she's listening to. Artie Shaw, Honeysuckle Jump. The DJ comes on and announces that same information about the song. Mr. Pitt's impressed. How did you know that? She tells him that her father used to own a big collection of big band records. The DJ then says that there are 3 more spots open to hold the ropes under the Woody Woodpecker balloon at the Thanksgiving Day Parade, and callers have to identify the songs in order to win. Oh, Mr. Pitt perks up and asks Elaine if she thinks she could identify the next song. Mr. Pitt, why would you want to hold one of the ropes under the Woody Woodpecker balloon? He says his father never allowed them to participate in the common things, and the Thanksgiving Day Parade was first on the list. All right, Elaine says, I'll try. The song comes on, and Mr. Pitt's all over her right away. Do you know it? What is it? What is it? Would you shut up? I can't hear. I'm sorry. Ah, she got it. Next stop, Pottersville. Mr. Pitt is ecstatic and does a little dance of his own while she picks up the phone to call the radio station. My take on this scene, I've said it before, but I love the menial tasks that Mr. Pitt has Elaine doing. What a fun thing to come up with as a writer. Like, you have to write an episode with Elaine and Mr. Pitt, and somewhere in there you gotta include some awful task for her to do. Getting socks, the mechanical pencil stuff. I mean, just so funny. And yeah, taking the salt off of pretzel rods must be the most just petty task, I think, of all. I've also said this before, but this relationship is so fun. He just to kind of break down the entire arc of what happens in this scene with Mr. Pitt and Elaine and to just illustrate what their relationship is. So he comes in with such authority. Elaine, are you done taking the salt off those pretzels? And then she just has this blasé attitude. No, I'm still working on it. She doesn't have, she has no kind of respect for his authority. And then we see her openly tell him, her boss, to shut up. And he doesn't even get mad. He's like, I'm sorry. There's just so many funny layers to this odd relationship. And I think it's one of the best duos of the series. And kudos to JLD for that adorable little desk dance. I think it's so cute. All right, next we're on the street. George is taking Jerry to his car, and he's like, you're going to love this car, even if you don't like Jon Voight. Jerry's like, I like Jon Voight. I just think it's a weird reason to buy a car because he might have driven it. Oh, George kind of stops him. What do you mean? He doesn't like this doubt in Jerry's voice. What, you don't think he actually owned the car? I don't know. Well, why would the guy lie about that? Of all the names, why pick Jon Voight? And Jerry says, see, that's the genius of it. Now, if he had said Liam Neeson, you'd know he would have been lying. George is so disgusted by the mention of Liam Neeson in the same breath as Jon Voight. Jerry notices he has gum on his shoe. Whoa, George says, you're not putting your gummy shoes in my new car. All right, I'll go change the shoes. So they turn around. And as they're walking back, George has to point out that Liam Neeson, he's not American. Next, we're at Jerry's apartment. George and Jerry enter. Jerry's going to look for another pair of shoes. George starts singing the theme to Midnight Cowboy, except he replaces the lyrics with driving around in Jon Voight's car. We hear Jerry yell for Kramer, and Kramer enters. Turns out he took all of Jerry's sneakers to the mom and pop store. You said take them, not all of them. Well, I guess there was a miscommunication. Well, what am I supposed to wear? Jerry says. Kramer points out he left him a pair. He's not looking. He comes out with some cowboy boots. Jerry's like, I don't want to wear those. They're uncomfortable. And he got them because apparently he played a club in Dallas. They couldn't afford to pay him, so they gave him the boots instead. He puts them on. Oh, these look ridiculous. Kramer's like, well, you look like a cowboy. I don't want to be a cowboy. I like that little callback to the puffy shirt episode. I don't want to be a pirate. Also, side note, Jerry, put your jeans over the freaking boots. Of course they look stupid with your jeans all bunched up around them. It's just that has always bugged me. Kramer tells him, hey, I got an invite to Tim Whatley's party. George says, oh, yeah, he did too. Oh, Jerry's a little bit perplexed. He didn't get one. But he called to get yours and Elaine's addresses, so I must be invited. Well, not necessarily. Well, why would he do that? And George has to throw it back in his face. Well, that's the genius of it. Jerry calls Elaine to see if she can find anything out from Tim Whatley. All right, next we are at the mom and pop store. An electrician is there, and he says they have a bunch of code violations. It's going to cost them $4,000 to repair it. And mom and pop can't afford that. Well, what happens if we can't pay for it? And the guy says, I have to report you then. Otherwise, I lose my license. Sorry. Pop is so angry. 48 years! And now we have to close because of that idiot and his bloody nose. And Kramer enters and tells them they have a crack in the sidewalk out there and they should get that fixed. Pop just glares at him. Next, we are in the LeBaron. George is humming more of the Midnight Cowboy theme as they're driving. Jerry is so cold, he asks them to put the top up. It's November. Nope, George feels alive. Jerry looks in the glove box and finds a pencil. That's Jon Voight's pencil. Jerry takes a closer look with Jon Voight's teeth marks. There's an owner's manual. Oh, you know what? This car was owned by Jon Voight. See, I told you, George says. Except John is spelled with an H. Doesn't Jon Voight spell his name Jon? This is so incredibly distracting to George. He has to pull over to talk to him. So what are you saying? Nothing. Maybe he misspelled his own name. Sometimes I spell Jerry with a G. And an I. Jerry laughs and laughs. George is so pissed off. He throws Jerry out of the car for ruining the whole experience for him. As Jerry's getting out, he spots Gregory Peck's bicycle and Barbara Mandrell's skateboard. Get out! Jerry gets out near a couple of tough guys. And they call him a cowboy and ask, "Where's your horse?" Uh-oh. Jerry tries to run away in his boots, but he's slipping everywhere. All right, next we're in Jerry's apartment. Elaine's there and George is there with him. Elaine's getting ice for Jerry's cheek. And he says it wasn't even because of those guys. He tripped because of the stupid boots. George apologizes for throwing him out. Well, you really seemed to enjoy it. Yeah, it was kind of fun, he admits. And then George says, well, maybe John Voight dropped the H for show business. Jon is a lot zippier. Yeah, that's possible. How can he find that out? Of course, he has the whole Yankee organization at his disposal, and he'll dispose of it. And George exits. Elaine tells Jerome that she did a little snooping around for you. Well, what'd you find out, Lois? Well, I called Tim Whatley, and I asked him if Jerry should bring anything. Subtle, And he said, why would Jerry bring anything? And Jerry's like, okay, well, let me ask you this. Where was the emphasis? Did he say, why would Jerry bring anything? Or why would Jerry bring anything? She's like, I think he emphasized would. Jerry says, you know what, to hell with this party. He doesn't even want to go. Kramer enters and tells Jerry that the mom and pop store is totally closed down. And everything's gone, along with Jerry's sneakers. They conned us, Jerry, and they got us big time. Elaine has to clarify what they're saying. So Mom and Pop's plan was to open their store, establish trust for 48 years, and then run off with Jerry's sneakers. Apparently. All right, this is enough of this. I love when Elaine just reaches her limit. She needs to go to the Dixieland Deli to pick up Mr. Pitt's pass for the parade. Jerry's like, why the hell does he want to do that? She's like, he finds Woody Woodpecker's laugh intoxicating. Ha 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 ha. My take on this scene, it's mostly about Jerry and George's stuff, but I do love the little conversation we get between Jerry and Elaine about her snooping around. Some fun physicality for JLD. I love the deep bend, as she says, Tim Whatley. And I also really enjoy the voice of reason moment with Elaine breaking down what Kramer is suggesting the big plan was with Mom and Pop. We can always count on Elaine to point out the guy's idiocy. All right, next we are in the Yankee office boardroom. George has called a meeting to suggest more promotional events like Joe Pepitone Day or John Voight Day. Mr. Morgan's like, what? John Voight, the actor? Oh, God. Mr. Morgan says he proposes they no longer have these meetings that have been initiated by George Costanza. Annoyed, George says, well, if he would have suggested Liam Neeson Day, they'd all be patting me on the back. I just thought of this. There are just, I feel like George just can't not like some actors. He's got a deep hatred for whatever reason for Liam Neeson. And then we've already seen how much he does not care for Ted Danson. It's like Ted Danson and Liam Neeson, man. Whew. Really, really get on George's nerves. All right, next we're at the Dixieland Deli. Elaine is sitting at a table with the other winners, and they ask what song she guessed to win the pass, and she tells them, next stop, Pottersville. And they all just scoff. Oh, that was easy. I knew that one. She asks when they'll be handing out the passes after the music, and just then a band starts playing right behind Elaine, scaring the shit out of her. My take on the scene, there's not much to say here, but such a real moment of these men totally dismissing her knowledge of big band music. I just feel like that's just something those types of men would do. All right, next we are on the street. Kramer is walking down the street and gets a nosebleed. He puts his head back with a tissue and he hears a man call for a taxi and looks to see who it is. Well, turns out it's John Voight, the John Voight. He starts yelling his name as John Voight gets into his cab. And then Kramer kind of hunches into his window to try and ask him something. John Voight gets freaked out and bites his arm in self-defense. All right, next we are at Jerry's apartment. So no John Voight Day at Yankee Stadium. George is like, God, now I'm always going to have this doubt about the car. Jerry is still all swollen. His tooth is killing him. He thinks he chipped it from that fall. He's been trying to call dentists, but no one works the day before Thanksgiving. George asks, well, are you going to go to Tim Whatley's party? No, I don't know if I'm invited. Because George points out, there's going to be a lot of dentists there. Jerry's got to see a dentist. He can't go the whole weekend with this pain. So he's like, hey, maybe I'll just go with you, George. George is like, maybe I'll just meet you there. I mean, he doesn't want to arrive with an unwelcome, uninvited intruder. Kramer enters and tells George about his John Voight encounter and what happened with the bite. He bit you? Well, it was justified. He thought I was going for his wallet. Anyway, he thinks if you take the pencil and we show my arm and the pencil to the dentists at the party, they can see if it's a match. Oh my God. No. It's not that stupid. No, it's stupid. It's worth a shot. Jerry asks Kramer, hey, can I go to the party with you? Oh, no, Kramer doesn't want to aid and abet some party crasher. All right, next we're at Tim Whatley's party. Okay, a lot of stuff happens in this scene. It's a long scene, so I'll just try and get through this as fast as possible. Jerry is sneaking in and mumbling to the guests, are you a dentist? Are you a dentist? Kramer and George are looking out the window at the balloons. George couldn't be less impressed. All he sees is Woody Woodpecker. You got a problem with him? Yeah, he doesn't like him. What is he, an instigator? Okay, so we can add Woody Woodpecker to the list of, I guess you can say, actors that George does not like. Liam Neeson, Ted Danson, Woody Woodpecker. Back inside, Elaine arrives and Jerry asks her if she got his message. What? She can't hear a thing. Her ears are ringing from that band playing next to her at the Dixieland Deli. But she is interested in finding Tim. Where's Tim? So Jerry, because she can't hear, asks her to marry him. What? All right, never mind. Tim greets George and Kramer, and George wants to ask about the bite marks, but then someone interrupts Tim to say goodbye. And, I want to grab your number. So he grabs a pencil out of George's hand. Then he spots Jerry on the couch. He asks George and Kramer, is that Jerry Seinfeld? Hey, he didn't come with us. Tim approaches Jerry. Hey, Jerry, I didn't think you'd show. Jerry tries to clarify. Did you say, Jerry, I didn't think you'd show? Or Jerry, I didn't think you'd show? He doesn't get to answer because Elaine taps him on the shoulder and Tim is so excited to see her. I'm really glad you came. What? He repeats himself and she still doesn't hear him, so she just says, uh-huh. He picks up a bowl of pretzels or some kind of party mix and asks her out for New Year's Eve, but he sort of gestures with the bowl of snacks. So she thinks that he's offering the pretzels to her, and so she shakes her head no with a kind of a grossed out expression. Tim is so insulted. Oh, thanks. And then he storms off. What? George and Kramer are with another guest. She's a dentist who tells them, yeah, it is possible to match the teeth marks. And so she sees Kramer start pulling up his sleeve. Someone bit you? John Voight bit you? George then is looking for the pencil and he sees Tim with it in his mouth across the room and freaks out. You're ruining John Voight's teeth marks. Tells Tim, yeah, it's John Voight's pencil. And he has his whole car downstairs. Oh, you bought his LeBaron convertible. Oh, George and Kramer are so excited. Yeah, so you know John Voight. Tim says, yeah, I went to dental school with him. The actor? No, the periodontist. Well, George just breaks a pencil and throws it away. Jerry is talking to a dentist by the window and asks him to take a look at his tooth. He's in agony. All right, sit back, the guy says. Jerry leans back and knocks an Empire State Building replica out the window, which ends up popping the Woody Woodpecker balloon, and Tim Whatley is furious. Who invited you anyway? You're a troublemaker. And Jerry's only response is, ha 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 ha. Now, I'm assuming everyone knows this, but I'm old, so maybe people don't know this. Ha 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 is the laugh of Woody Woodpecker. So, in case you didn't know. My take on the scene, like I said, it's a lot jam-packed into one scene. They do a really good job with it, though. I like sort of how everything, kind of steals focus from one thing happening, and then all of a sudden we're on to another thing. So just to focus on the Elaine stuff, that moment with Jerry where he asks her to marry him is always funny to me. I think it's really somewhat cute and, funny at the same time. I adore the Elaine and Tim interaction. And, oh boy, Bryan Cranston is super handsome in this episode. I mean, I think we all think of him probably mostly as Walter White from Breaking Bad or maybe the goofy dad from Malcolm in the Middle. But in my world, Bryan Cranston can get it, okay? I mean, he's not like hot in Breaking Bad, but as Tim Whatley, yeah, he's super, super handsome. And he and JLD have great chemistry together, and I'm excited that he will be coming back for a few more episodes. Anyway, this little interaction in this episode is perfect. And JLD, we've discovered deaf acting for JLD is really, really good. All right, next we're at Jerry's apartment. Jerry and Kramer are watching the parade, and we hear the announcers talking about how the Woody Woodpecker balloon is running out of air. Kramer's like, "Oh, those kids look pretty disappointed." Jerry's like, "Yeah, especially that big kid in the front. How old is he anyway?" And it's Mr. Pitt trying to push the balloon up. The phone rings. A person on the other end tells Jerry that he just bought a pair of sneakers from an old couple at a garage sale, and they claimed that these sneakers belonged to Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian. So Jerry gets the address and he tells Kramer, "I found Mom and Pop. They're in Parsippany, New Jersey." "Let's go," Kramer says. "Well, Jerry's car is in the shop." "How are we getting to Parsippany?" So we see Jerry and Kramer in a bus. Kramer gets a nosebleed. These nosebleeds are starting again. Jerry's like, "We should get you to a hospital." "Not going to no Bellevue. Look at me. I'm falling apart here." And Jerry cradles him and Kramer pushes him away. I believe this is a parody of a Jon Voight movie. Forgive me. I don't know what it is. I saw screenshots of it. It's with Dustin Hoffman. They're in that very same kind of bus scene. But in the interest of me having no interest, I'm going to move on. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. It wasn't like I ate them all the time. It was a Halloween party, and there was a bowl of candy. Well, I paid for that later. I guess technically I lied, but how many times can one person ask the same question about flossing? It just got to be too much. Does this sound familiar to you? Are your teeth causing stress in your relationship? If not, it's probably because you aren't in a relationship with a dentist. But if you are, then this chat line is for you. At youdidn'tmarrymyteeth.com, you can chat with counselors who will help you navigate difficult scenarios of being with a dentist. We were hanging on by a floss, if you will. My wife just wouldn't stop bringing the office home with her. I'd be reading a book, and all of a sudden she'd appear with a bright lamp shining on me, asking me to say, "Ah!" If I even looked at a can of soda, she'd hold up my x-ray showing my one cavity I've ever had, from 15 years ago. And the name calling. Receding gums guy. Coffee-stained stupid head. Dumbass piece of shit. It was brutal. But after chatting with Margie at youdidn'tmarrymyteeth.com, I was able to properly communicate some boundaries for us, and it really helped. I said to my wife, "I'm not stubborn tartar, so put your scraper away." Thanks, youdidn'tmarrymyteeth.com. You are more than your teeth, and your dentist partner needs to understand that. Don't struggle alone. Create a profile at youdidn'tmarrymyteeth.com today and start your journey to a happy relationship where your teeth do not exist. youdidn'tmarrymyteeth.com. Being with a dentist shouldn't be like pulling teeth. And we're back. Okay, for the extras, I just wanted to cover a deleted scene. Now, we see in the episode, the actual aired episode, how Jerry's like, "I'm going to call Elaine and see what she can find out from Tim Whatley." So the deleted scene is Jerry and Elaine's conversation. So she's at Mr. Pitt's office, he's at home, and Jerry tells Elaine to call Tim Whatley to ask if he's invited to the party. And she's like, "I can't do that." She's trying to maintain a mystique, she says. And then she tells Jerry, "I think Mr. Pitt is a bit of a nutcase. He made me enter some contest so he could carry one of the Woody Woodpecker balloon ropes." Then we hear Mr. Pitt in another room doing the ha 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 laugh. Jerry's like, "Just forget about Woody Woodpecker and focus on calling Tim." It's not a great scene, so I can totally see why they cut that out. All right, now it's time to open Greg's sack lunch. Greg is our most dedicated contributor to this podcast, and this is what he had to say about the mom and pop store. So the first thing in Greg's sack is his favorite scene and Elaine moments. He says, "Here is another episode where George's storyline is the funniest to me. The whole Jon Voight car thing is so hilarious of a premise, and of course George would buy a car just because a celebrity owned it. I love when Elaine and Jerry are asking him about it and he says, no, no. And Jerry says, I think yes, yes. The simplest, most funny thing of Elaine's story in this episode is when she's shown picking the salt off of Mr. Pitt's pretzels for him. How ridiculous is that? And who would want them saltless? Why not just eat some wood chips? Because that's essentially the same thing. I also love when Elaine is trying to identify the big band song and she yells at Mr. Pitt, would you shut up? I can't hear. And he apologizes. I love this relationship and I would have watched it for the entire run of the series had they made that choice. Oh, yes, I agree with so much of this, Greg. I will say, as far as salt on pretzels, now if I were to get a hot pretzel, I do get the saltless one. I do, because they always put way too much salt. And it's like that big ass rock salt. I'm like, it's way too much salt for me. So I actually do get them saltless, but I will dip them in like a cheese sauce, maybe a marinara sauce. I don't know why I have to say it like that, but it's a marinara sauce. Now, pretzel rods are a little different. Still a little too salty for me, but maybe I think, you know what, Mr. Pitt probably can't have too much salt in his diet. So that's why he still wants a pretzel, but just take the salt off of them. And also I have to say, it's so embedded in there that even if you take them off, it's still some saltiness is still gonna remain. So you know what? As I'm explaining this, I think I might try this. I mean, it might just be the right amount of salt that I need. Just call me Mr. Pitt. All right, next in Greg's sack, he has a scene swap idea. He says, this episode is called The Mom and Pop Store because of Kramer and Jerry's story, but to me, that is the weakest thing going on. This is essentially a Thanksgiving episode, yet there is no discussion of the holiday at all or their plans other than watching the parade. They could have done something more Thanksgiving-y with the gang and skipped the whole Mom and Pop story altogether. Or at the very least, I would have liked to have seen more Elaine in the George Carr story, any chance to get them together, and there would have been plenty of opportunity for her to make fun of his purchase. Also, I don't get how Mom and Pop would have a garage sale in late November in New Jersey on Thanksgiving Day. I'm starting to hate Mom and Pop more than I hate the Drake. Ooh, you said a lot there, Greg. I like it. There are, yes, I agree. There are a lot of weird things in this episode. And when I say weird, I think I just mean kind of lazy writing and kind of cheap things. To your point, so this this garage sale is happening on Thanksgiving Day, and why? I mean, yeah, in November in New Jersey, who's having a garage sale? I totally don't get that. That's a really good point. Yeah, the Mom and Pop story to me is really weak as well. To be honest, I'm kind of finding a pattern here. I'm not a big fan of the Tom Gamble and Max Pross episodes in general. I really don't think they know how to write Elaine very well. Jerry and Larry do. They do a fantastic job with it. Back when Larry Charles was still a writer, he did awesome. Certainly Peter Melman knows how to write Elaine. So yeah, there are just some writers that don't create the best storylines for Elaine. And unfortunately, from what I've seen, Tom Gamble and Max Pross are two of those writers. All right, next in Greg's sack are his final thoughts. This episode has tons of laughs, mostly because of George, Elaine, and Mr. Pitt. JLD does great work with what she's given here, which is mostly supportive, and like almost every other sack lunch, I just want more of her and her story. Especially with Tim. I love Bryan Cranston as Tim Whatley. The way he pops up randomly throughout the series and is somewhat of a nemesis to Jerry and an on and off love interest for Elaine is always written so well, and his performance is just genius. That scene where Elaine can't hear him and misunderstands his asking her out as him offering a snack was so funny. I needed it to be longer just to get more of them together. Ultimately, this episode should have been called The Woody Woodpecker or The LeBaron. Oh my gosh, I could not agree more. I mean, that just makes so much more sense. I know. I thought he was hot in this episode, but that's not the only reason I would have liked to see more Bryan Cranston. But more specifically to your point, Greg, more Tim Whatley and more Elaine together. I thought that would have been really fun. And yeah, I agree with you. I love the LeBaron storyline. It is so funny. And it's actually based on what happened to either Tom Gamble or Max Pross. I think Tom Gamble actually bought a car because he was told it was owned by John Voight. And funny enough, when John Voight guested in this episode, he looked at that very car and was like, yeah, I've never seen that car in my entire life. So it kind of was so meta and art imitating life, life imitating art. And so anyway, yeah, I totally agree. Like I said, I think it's a little bit heavy-handed with kind of the dovetailing at the end. Yeah, I think we could have done with certainly more Elaine and George together, and definitely more Elaine and Tim. Thank you so much for your thoughts, Greg. Now it's time to close Greg's sack lunch. And now it's time for a segment I like to call, And What is the Comment? Now, this is where I mentioned some comments that were left on the Hot and Heavy social media. And, well, it doesn't happen that often because I don't get that many comments. Well, I don't get that many comments relevant to what I'm asking about in the Seinfeld episode. I do get a lot of unsolicited comments about my looks and what I might have done to a certain body part of a male follower or someone who just happened to stumble upon a video. Just quickly, dudes, stop. I don't want you to be disgusting and tell me what my, video did to you and your body. It's gross. Just stop. In general, that's just unwelcome behavior. But this week, I did get a comment that I did want to share and talk about a little bit. It was from Kenny, and I actually know Kenny. Kenny and I, pre-pandemic, used to attend this dance class together called Dance Jam at the gym, and oh my gosh, we tore it up, you guys. It was such a fun class. I really miss that class, and I miss dancing with you, Kenny. But anyway, hopefully we will dance again, and I really loved your comment this week. Kenny says, I love Mr. Pitt's song and dance. Next stop, Pottersville. Next stop, Pottersville. I do too. It's so cute. And like, he just exudes this joy with like the way he he's doing like this little sidestep with his hands. It wasn't quite what we did, Kenny, you and I, in our dance jam class. I just thought of the irony of you bringing up Mr. Pitt's dancing when you and I would often be in a dance class together. Yeah, it's not quite the same. I had a patented, well, not really, but like in my head patented move where I would sort of hump the floor. It was my ode to the Dirty Pop video by NSYNC. So I did that every class, whether people liked it or not. And yeah, there was more booty shaking, a little bit more hip hop vibe to it. It wasn't a Next Stop Pottersville type dance, but I am totally with you, Kenny. I love Mr. Pitt's dance as well. A lot of great dancing between Mr. Pitt and Elaine, What a treat. Not something we see very often in Seinfeld. Thank you so much, Kenny, for your comment. And please, if you follow Hot and Heavy on social media, make sure you tune into the videos I post every week asking for some thoughts on the episode that I'm covering. And if you comment, it might end up on the podcast. All right, moving on to my favorite Elaine moments. It's small, but I love her little desk dance, to be honest. I think it's so cute. I just like, it makes me want to do a little do 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 do. I was dancing there. I know you can't see it. A close second would be her telling Mr. Pitt to shut up. That is fantastic. You know what? Oh gosh, in the moment here, I'm making a change. No, my favorite moment is her telling Mr. Pitt to shut up with the close second of the desk dance. Just flipped it. You guys, just happened right now. I do want to say there's an honorable mention with her lean down move when she says Tim Whatley. I love it. All right, my final notes. It's a pretty solid Elaine episode. She gets a good chunk of the plot, which I like. And there's quite a bit of comedy that JLD gets to shine with. And overall, I'm satisfied. I do think, yes, of course, we could have used more. I would have liked more Elaine in different storylines, like Greg says. Like, I would have liked her more involved with the LeBaron, maybe a little bit more Tim and her interaction. But overall, I mean, she's not in a dud storyline, which is sort of the mom and pop store storyline. So that's good. And I do think she gets some really fun, cute moments. I'm really not a fan of the Jon Voight bite thing. It makes for some really fun moments. But even like sometimes when they come up with something so stupid and then they call it out in the episode, no, it's stupid. Yeah, that doesn't work for me. Just don't do it. If it's so stupid you have to say it in the episode, maybe think of something else. So overall, the episode is a fine episode. I don't know. It's one that if it was on TV, I'd watch it, but I wouldn't have to watch it, if that makes sense. And I think that's all I can say about the mom and pop store. Please make sure you're following Hot and Heavy on social media. On Instagram, it's at Hot Heavy Elaine. On TikTok, it's at Elaine Bennis Podcast. And if you'd like to email me with any thoughts, please do at elainepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.